Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Jet Fuel podcast here on GShow Productions. For episode 3, I'm your host, Graham, the GShow Forsyth. Just want to point something out before we start. We've been having trouble recording our past 2 Winnipeg Jets episodes. It's tough to download these live streams and convert them and put them into what we need to put them on Spotify. So, yeah, we're going to try our best to get these episodes to Spotify, but they are available on our YouTube, of course. All of these will be for the official Winnipeg Jets podcast of GShow Productions. Of course, this week's episode is brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs, with store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg. Check them out today. You can also check out their website at midcanadafasteners.shop to take a look at all their great products. We're also brought to you by Terrico, an agricultural company here in Manitoba, with locations around Winnipeg, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years. If you guys want to check out what all the fuss is about with their products, they're really good products that Manitoba producers have trusted for the past 8 decades. And more than that, be sure to check out their website at terrico.ca. The Winnipeg Jets currently playing in a preseason game. It's currently the second intermission. They're tied 1-1 with the Calgary Flames. Jansen Harkins opened up the scoring for his first of the preseason. The goal was assisted by Chisholm and Ford, and then the Calgary Flames answered back in the first period near the end of it with a goal by Hunt, assisted by Rooney and Mackenzie Weegar. The Jets getting heavily outshot in this one. It's 22-7 in the shot category. Calgary outshot Winnipeg 15-3 in the first period, which is pretty wild. Both teams have had their chances on the power play so far. Calgary is 0 for 3 tonight on the man advantage, while the Jets are 0 for 2 after going 2 for 6 on the man advantage last game. And yeah, some notable players for the Jets playing. It's the Perfetti lineup tonight. He has no points at this point, of course, but Chisholm has played the most time. No, it's Logan Stanley who's played the most time out of any Winnipeg Jets tonight. Jeffrey Veal has a 12 minutes in terms of penalty minutes in this game. So there's some notable stats there, as well as Connor Hellebuyck. He led in 1 goal on 19 shots, saved 18. Salmonen is now in net for the Winnipeg Jets, I believe, and he stopped all 3 shots he's faced so far. Going to give you guys updates throughout this show after the first guest ends up exiting after his interview is done, and that's Connor Hrabchak, a pretty big influence within the Winnipeg Jets social media scene. He's got his own podcast, and he's officially credentialed to cover the Winnipeg Jets, follow along and join in their media scrums this season. I had a great chat with Connor yesterday about the first 2 games of the Winnipeg Jets preseason, what he's like so far, his thoughts on players. I give my thoughts as well, and yeah, should be a good one. Special thanks to Nico Feniak, of course, for producing the intro of this episode, and he produces the outro as well, and also got a big announcement coming at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for it. Big news surrounding the brand here at GShow Productions. But without further ado, let's throw it to the segment, the one and only guest joining this week's edition of the Jet Fuel podcast, the official Winnipeg Jets podcast of GShow Productions. Connor Hrabchak joining me next here on episode 3 of Jet Fuel. Joining me on this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast for episode 3 is a writer for the Hockey Writers. He's the host of his own podcast, the Level Flight podcast, and he's the new member of the Winnipeg Sports Talk, and he just received his credentials to follow the Jets this season, to cover them during pressers and all that good stuff. It's Connor Hrabchak.
Oh, yeah.
Connor, great to have you on the show. This is a big time for me. I mean, you're a big presence on Winnipeg Jets Twitter. I mean, I feel like you're probably over the moon right now in terms of all the great stuff that's been happening to you as of recent.
Yeah, you did your homework. You nailed all of that. I appreciate that.
Or
Yeah, I it's been a crazy couple of weeks with the Winnipeg Sports Talk and getting the credentials for the hockey writers. And yeah, I'm going to my first game tomorrow as a media member. That should be pretty cool, even though it's preseason. But yeah, I'm super excited. First full season covering NHL hockey. It's gonna be awesome.
what are the nerves like right now? I'm sure there's a bit of nerves, but mostly excitement.
Yeah, I mean, my first media scrum was Shifley and Hellebuck, and that was like super hyped up, and I felt great during that. So I think it's just downhill from there. So I think I'll be all right in terms of nerves because I think I peaked in the first ever media scrum.
Yeah, and those are two big name players to cover in your first media scrum, of course,
Exactly.
Scheifele and Hellebuck, and a lot of questions from the media surrounding them if they're going to stay or not as Winnipeg Jets. And both had some great things to say, as you know, about the franchise and Hellebuck keeping an open mind, whatnot. But let's get right into it, Connor. The Jets.
So
It's only preseason, but hey, starting off 2-0 against a team who they didn't beat last preseason in the Edmonton Oilers, winning 2-1 in a shootout on Sunday in Edmonton and a big 5-0 win yesterday. Your thoughts, how the team has looked, and just in general throughout these first two games to start things off?
yeah, that game last night against Edmonton was really impressive, even though Edmonton sent a pretty brutal team. They sent basically their AHL roster. Um, I don't know. I don't know why teams do that in the preseason. I view it as kind of a waste of time if you're the Oilers, just sending your entire AHL roster. But nonetheless, the Jets took care of business. The top line, I think, could have looked a bit better at 5-on-5, that being Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde. And then the second line last night, but the real fourth line of Barron, Kapari, and Nemestikov, I thought was the spotlight. I wrote about them looking great in training camp. Last night they followed it up. Barron had a pretty sweet goal. Nemestikov set up Pionk for his goal, and they were just forechecking, and they didn't really give up many chances either. And you look at that, the stats, the analytics, all the fancy stats, they excelled there too. So I think the eye test and the numbers matched up, and the fourth line could be one of the best ones the Jets have had in years. And then Brossoit picks up a 26 save shutout. And if you were looking at the rosters, Rick Bowness said this after the game too. Like, if you look at the rosters both teams were playing, this is how it should have played out. So there's not too much that's like sweeping takeaways, but the fourth line and Brossoit getting a shutout, that's pretty notable.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been talking about this fourth line throughout the first two episodes of the show, thinking that it just seems like they all fit really well for those roles. With Barron bringing the
Mhm.
high energy, Kupari doing the reliable things that he can, and he looked, like he can bring some speed to the lineup as well. He's a younger player, which is nice to have on that fourth line. And Mesnikov, we saw it yesterday, does all the little things right, good complementary piece on a line, as we saw he was more than that yesterday, picking up 2 assists. And of course, this is going to be the fourth line for the Jets this season. And like you said, maybe one of the best up there for what we've seen in Jets 2.0 history. Who knows what's going to happen? It's early in preseason still, but I thought Velarde looked really strong in both ends yesterday. I think that his defensive presence that he's going to bring along with that offense, the skating, the silky hands, and the shot is going to be really fun to watch. And one thing to note yesterday was that, I mean, once again, it's only preseason, and like you said, the Oilers brought out pretty much an AHL roster. The most notable players they had in the lineup yesterday were Kulak, Holloway, and Cece, but
Right.
just seemed Shifley committed to. I think it was in the third period where he finished a check coming back hard in his own end. That's what I think Jets fans are going to want to see from 55 this season. That's what he was preaching during his first media scrum of the season too, how he's looking to work hard and better his game. But yeah, the fourth line was buzzing. Nemesnikov 2 assists,
Mhm.
Barron with a goal, Kupari was creating, and then just good puck movement. They haven't practiced the power play all that much yet, but going 2 for 6, I like the way they were setting up on the power play, getting looks there. Velarde had that sweet spinorama pass to
Yeah.
Connor to set up that first goal. But Salamonson looked really good in the ozone yesterday.
Yeah.
Goaltending has been solid. And even yesterday, like Logan Stanley and Pionk looked good. So, I mean, looking back in game number one,
Perfetti, he looked really solid at that center position, scored the lone goal in the shootout. And, the Jets ended up getting outshot in that game, but played against more of the bigger name players on the Oilers. And Ryan Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, as well as Kane and Nurse as the notables. But if there's any great start that the Jets were going to have in preseason, this meets that standard, and hoping they could keep it up as the competition is going to get stiffer along in this preseason as more teams are going to play probably their most notable players.
Yeah, and yeah, I said like I think it's a waste of time for the Oilers to send that group. Like you see the group the Jets sent to Edmonton, like there's players there that are going to be playing meaningful minutes for the Winnipeg Jets this season. And just because it's a road game doesn't mean they're going to send the Manitoba Moose, right? Like Cole Perfetti looked great. That Nino Niederreiter and him had really great chemistry on that. What's going to be the second line. I thought Ville Heinola had a great game. Now he's likely not going to make the roster due to waivers and stuff like that. All the politics involved with that, but it's still nice to see a former first round pick coming into his own, having a great game. And yeah, the Jets won. Colin Delia had 36 saves of 37 shots. Like that kind of came out of nowhere as well. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you could, like you said, you couldn't have asked for a better start, 2-0. And Calgary tomorrow night. I'd hope that it's, a bit of a better game. Calgary sends a better team and it's tight, but we'll see. Calgary might send an AHL roster as well, and then the Jets just roll them. We'll see.
Yeah, and you'd have to think, the thinking in terms of sending the quality of roster like the Oilers did is maybe some fear of guys getting injured, but I feel
Right.
like that happens more so in the NFL preseason more so than the NHL
Yeah.
preseason. You rarely really see big injuries happening before the season starts in the NHL. But yeah, to see Perfetti looking really comfortable in that second line center position, something that the Jets need to fill and need to solidify heading into the season, is great. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen if Nikolai Ehlers plays tomorrow. I know that he's questionable at this point. In my opinion, that's a guy that I wouldn't mind him sitting for as long as possible to
Yeah.
feel 100%, because he's going to be a huge part of this team's success up front this year coming up. But yeah, excited to see what the lineup is going to look like as the roster gets cut down more and more. But yeah, a really good start for the Jets, and nice to see that puck movement looking really good in the O zone, especially yesterday.
Yeah, and you brought up Ehlers. I mean, that second line with Perfetti in the middle and then Ehlers and Niederreiter on the wing. A lot of people are saying like that line is the key because this is, like we said, maybe the best fourth line the Jets 2.0 have ever had. Maybe it's the best bottom six. I think 2017-18 is probably up there. They're probably number one, but this bottom six is up there with the best that the Jets have had since they've come back. And it's really up to that second line to play like a top six line to make this one of the most complete forward groups that the Jets have ever had. If Perfetti doesn't work out at center, or if Nikolai Ehlers can't stay healthy, then you could maybe run into some issues in the trickle down effect into the bottom six. But that line, I think stylistically, they're all going to fit.
Yeah.
Perfetti's he's got great passing, great vision. Niederreiter's got a great shot, and Ehlers will do the bulk of the transition work, the skating,
Yeah.
and just be his dynamic self if he can stay healthy. I doubt they play him tomorrow night, even if he's like, they're going to be very cautious. Maybe he'll take the morning skate, or maybe he'll skate with the group that's not playing. But to see him get game action this early, I'm not sure. Maybe they'll just play him the last preseason game, or maybe they'll just hold him out altogether to the regular season, because that line and health within that line, we know Cole Perfetti struggled with injuries too. That line has got to stay healthy. They've got to produce, and then the Jets will have, yeah, one of the best forward cores they've had since they've returned.
Yeah, and I've said it on the show. I think the balance is so prevalent in this year's lineup
Yeah.
for the Jets. There's so many different combinations that they could take you in that top nine. And yeah, you're so right in terms of Ehlers being that creator, that guy that's going to handle most of the bulk of the transition.
Mhm.
On paper on that second line, Perfetti bringing that good two-way game, and we know how good he can create and makes players better around him. And Niederreiter, a guy that consistently puts up around 20 or over 20 goals,
Yeah.
for the past few seasons. So Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Ehlers being held out of the lineup if it means he's going to be ready to go and ready to start the season. And even if Perfetti doesn't work out at center, maybe you look at putting a guy like Velarde back there, as good as that first line looks, because that's a guy who was a natural centerman heading into the NHL. But yeah, I think that things, I'm more optimistic this year about the Jets heading into the season because of what they have on paper. I mean, there's still the questions about the defense. I think there's still holes there, but Connor Hellebuck is going to be Connor Hellebuck this season. And
Right.
then you got that extra stability in net now with Laurent Brossoit. Bonus, who really changed things up with the way this team plays systematically last season and got more of a buy-in. It just seems like all the things could be coming together for the Jets this year to have a year where they surprise most of their critics. So it'll be exciting to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. And you talked about Brossoit. I mean, I think Hellebuck not playing 70 games is going to be huge. I mean, if they can have competent play, and we saw it with the shutout, right? If they can have competent play from their backup goaltending position, and Brossoit can maybe play 25 games, 30 games, 30 might be a little much depending on where the Jets are in the standings, but giving Hellebuck some nights off, like last year down the stretch, I remember it was evident that he needed a few nights off, but they were chasing for the playoffs. They didn't trust David Riddick down the stretch, so they had to play Hellebuck and just hope that he could overcome the clear kind of fatigue that he was showing. And sometimes it worked out. Like he would play the second night of a back-to-back, and then there was that one game on the road against the Rangers where he made 50 whatever saves and the Jets won 4-1. And it was like, well, it's the second night of a back-to-back. So how, like, usually you sit goalies in that scenario, and then he comes out and makes 50 saves or whatever it was. But he's obviously a workhorse goalie. You can play him 65 plus games. But at 31 years old, I don't know if the Jets really want to be doing that, especially if they go the extension route. That's a larger topic, but dumbed down, Brossoit playing 25 games and being a competent backup goaltender and providing some value to this team is going to be huge.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this Jets team shapes up heading into the season. I feel like there's not going to be too many roster changes in terms of what's projected for the starting lineup at this point for opening night. But you had mentioned Billy Hanola. This is a guy that I've really wanted to see make the Jets roster. It's going to be tough to do it this year. And I honestly don't think it'll happen. But I mean, you talked about it. He looked really good in the first preseason game for this team. I mean, his transition game is a strength. I feel like he's a guy that ideally in the future you'd like to see him quarterback a power play too, a guy that's really good with his stick. What are your thoughts on what the Jets should do with Ville Heinola? Depending on what happens, do you feel like a trade should be in the works?
Yeah, I mean that's the question, right? There's sorry, excuse me. There's the possibility of a trade, and there's Stanley, there's Chisholm, there's Capobianco. They're gonna lose one of those guys outside of Ville Heinola. Like that's if they send Ville down. That becomes two of those guys if they keep Ville up. So it's a really interesting topic. Jets fans love Ville Heinola, but as it stands right now, he's gonna get sent back down no matter how good he plays. It's waivers, it's the fact that they can't lose two defensemen for nothing, or if Villy plays that good where they're comfortable losing, say, both Stanley and Chisholm or both Capobianco and Chisholm to waivers, that is like he's got to play incredible and play at like a top 4 level in camp, because it's just simply the fact that he doesn't need waivers and he can just go down to the Moose, do what he's done for the last 3 years, play top line minutes, top power play, top penalty kill, dominate the AHL, uh, and he'll do that again. Then next year for him is a little more open because you've got Dylan DeMello, you've got Brendan Dillon, who are both expiring. You've got Nate Schmidt then with 1 year left on his deal. And I think Neil Pionk as well would also then be a UFA the next year after. So next year looks a little bit more clear for his chances, but that's what you want to see. Like you said, he's a first round pick. He played great. Transition is his calling card, and making those, the quick first passes out of the zone, stuff like that. And it's unfortunate because in my opinion, no matter how good he plays, it's simply waivers, and he's going to be back down with the Moose.
Yeah, and that's the reality of
Yeah.
it. And I think that for Hanola, what he said in the past, I mean, being asked about if he feels like he should get an opportunity, he feels that. So is there going to
Mhm.
come a point where he goes to the front office and says, "Hey, I've shown you guys my worth. You guys haven't given me a fair shot. Let's look at a trade to someone who will take me and use me for what I feel is value to be." And by the way, Capobianco let one rip yesterday. It was nice to see that. But yeah, I don't I feel like Chevy has to be smart in this aspect in terms of how he manages guys like Chisholm and Hinola, especially because you can't lose those guys for nothing. You could get good returns back for them, but potentially for, guys that could, be on some NHL rosters, on some decors in this league.
Yeah, and Cal Capobianco, in my opinion, is like the perfect seventh defenseman where if someone were to go down and he has to step in for a game, he showed it last year. He played in a handful of games. He could play well in third pairing minutes. So losing him to waivers, like people are like, oh well, they'll keep Stanley and Chisholm because they're younger, they're drafted and developed in this organization, and they'll just put Capobianco on waivers. And if he gets claimed, he gets claimed. And my thinking is, well, Capobianco, I think, should be the seventh defenseman over a Logan Stanley. Now Declan Chisholm is a whole nother story. Uh, I'm taking the wait and see approach personally with him because he looked great last year, AHL All-Star. Do they try and roll the dice with him on waivers? I think it's a 50-50 chance he would get claimed. Um,
Yeah.
I earlier on in the offseason, I said it was a lock that he would get claimed, and I think I've kind of cooled on that a little bit. But if he looks great, then he's got to stay up, right? And the easiest, I don't want to say easiest, maybe that's not the right word, but the path I think that is most likely to clear this up is to make a trade and to trade one of these guys.
Yep.
Who has the most value? I'm not sure, but it's such a complex and weird situation because there are so many different ways it can go, and everything can get thrown out of the window if Ville Heinola wins a job. If Ville Heinola wins a job in the Jets blue line or something crazy happens, then their options become much more limited, and it's unfortunate because he's a first round pick. He's done the time in the AHL. He looks good. And there's really no chance for him. And he's 22 years old now, I believe. So his first NHL action is going to come when he's 23.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see for sure what happens there. Kind of a good problem for the Jets to have, but also a tough situation that they're in,
Right.
deciding what to do with these players. I just hope, if anything, Chevy just doesn't sit and wait to the last minute to do something about it and ends up losing one of those guys for nothing. Stanley, I mean, I wouldn't mind. I'm not the biggest Stanley fan. I've been vocal about that on the show to my buddies, but gonna be interesting to see what happens with all four of those guys. Some news has come out about who's been reassigned and released from the Winnipeg
Right.
Jets. Dominic DiVincentis getting reassigned to North Bay in the OHL, Jacob Julian to London in the OHL, and Connor Levis to Kamloops in the WHL. And Jimmy Oligny, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Simon Kubasek and CJ Seuss have all been released from the team. Any surprises there? Not really, I assume.
No surprises there. I mean, DiVincentis, like goaltenders are always late bloomers. It seems like that goalies aren't going to win a job at 20 years old. They'll come into the NHL at 23, 24. So junior, the next step for him is the AHL, maybe a year or two from now, and then the NHL, if all goes well, of course. And then yeah, Julian and Levis, I think, were the other two. They were just drafted, so they'll go back down. And then the Moose guys, Olanis was the captain of the Moose last year. Definitely no surprise there. CJ Cease played with the Moose a long time ago, a few years ago. He's been down with San Jose and the San Jose Barracuda the last 2-3 years. Back with the Moose now. That'll be big for, like just a locker room presence and familiarity. And yeah, no surprises there really. The junior players, like it would have been a crazy story if DiVincentis was amazing, but Yeah, these players were just drafted. They're young. They're going to go back and do their time with the development. And the Moose guys are leaders in that locker room. So they'll be the first ones at Moose training camp, which I believe starts October 1st, like next week, Monday. I could be wrong, but next week for sure.
Won't quote you on the date specifically, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, really not surprising. I am really excited about the future for the Jets and net, though, because I mean, we got Hellebuck, or they got Hellebuck and Broswan. Now they just drafted Thomas Milic, who I think is going to be a stud, and Dominic Gentes, who I keep butchering his name. He looked really acrobatic and really good at the Young Stars tournament. I mean, Connor Levis is a guy that the Jets stole in the draft just by his point production. He's going to have another year to grow in the WHL. We'll see how Jacob Julian continues to develop in the OHL after playing in his first season of OHL hockey last year. But yeah, I mean, really with the guys that were released from the team, not really surprising. Didn't really think they had a shot to even make it. So yeah, we'll see what continues to happen there. I think there's going to be maybe some surprises, maybe some things that were pretty expected. But one last thing to talk about, I mean, the prospects to start off. Chaz Lucius hasn't looked the greatest in his first game, at least. I mean, he's a guy that hasn't played that much hockey since the shoulder surgery last year. So I think there's some context there that is important to be noted. But Brad Lambert is looked fast and is creating, especially in his first game. A guy like Salamonson showed how good he was yesterday for the Jets, especially in the offensive zone. The future's looking bright there. What are your thoughts on the prospects and how they've, or the big name prospects that is for the Jets that have impressed or not impressed so far?
Yeah, Chaz Lucius, I think you brought up the whole story there. I think, he hasn't played much hockey, and I kind of labeled him as a breakout candidate, like out of the, Colby Barlow, Brad Lambert, and Chaz Lucius, the forward prospects that are attending camp. He probably had the highest probability to break out and somehow improbably win a roster spot. But the truth is, he just hasn't played much hockey. He's still probably feeling the effects of that shoulder injury, and he's just trying to get his conditioning back. I think the next couple preseason games will be big. He got that first game under his belt, kind of washed off the rust. The next couple ones, if he gets into them, will be key watching him. And yeah, Brad Lambert makes the flashy plays. He's so fast. He's fun to watch. Last year, he kind of struggled in kind of a structured game with the Moose where he wasn't the top offensive option. Then obviously he goes to Seattle. He is the top offensive option and he crushes. But bringing that style of hockey that he plays with Seattle, being a puck dominant offensive player and bringing it to the AHL is key for him. And then Elias Salomonsson, I was super impressed with him at training camp. He was moving incredibly well. The Jets were doing these 5-on-5 drills where the forwards would dump it in, and then it's up to Team Blue or Team White to break the puck out and go down and score at the other end or get a chance or whatever. And obviously he's paired with arguably the best puck mover in Josh Morrissey. And they were just snapping the puck around and getting out of the zone with ease. And it was super impressive how calm he was, how poised he was. I thought he looked great, and the same things applied to the preseason game where the Jets won 5-0, and he was with Morrissey, and they looked really good together. Obviously, I like the thought process of putting your top defensive prospect with like Josh Morrissey and really giving him every opportunity and seeing everything you've got in a prospect like that. Does he have a chance to make the team? No, he's going to go back to Sweden this year, and he's going to play huge minutes. He's going to dominate over there. And we'll see him at the World Juniors probably. And then, yeah, he's probably a year or two away, but I've been super impressed with what I've seen so far from Elias Salomonsson.
Yeah, Salmonson, I mean, I had a chance to look at some of his tape from his time playing in Sweden, obviously watching him with the Jets, and he just looks like a smooth skating, complete 200-foot defenseman. Like you said, really crisp, good on the breakouts. Sure, there were some mistakes from him yesterday, but that's, I mean, a young player just figuring things out. He got better as the game went along with Josh Morrissey, and you're so right, being paired with, the Jets best puck moving defenseman in Josh Morrissey that's on the roster. That's big time. And yeah, Brad Lambert, I mean, I think it's going to be huge for him. I don't expect him to make the roster because I don't think there's going to be a spot where he can develop the right way on this Jets team this year. I think for him, it's more about this year continuing to build confidence and continuing to show what you can do at that next level from the WHL to the AHL with the Moose. And yeah, for Chaz Lucius, I'm with you. He was a guy that out of all the prospects, I was thinking, could potentially crack this team with the questions about that fourth line centerman position. But I think Kupari is going to fill it. And just, yeah, it went over my head that until Scott Billig brought it up on last week's show that he had the shoulder surgery. So he hasn't played that much hockey, and getting a shoulder surgery, I mean, that's your shoulder, you're using it to hit, you're using it to shoot, you're using it in so many ways. So it's all about getting back into the right condition for him. Hopefully he continues to build his confidence up this year in the AHL when he gets reassigned back there. But yeah, it's nice to know that the future is bright on the back end at the right-handed shot, especially. It's something that the Jets have lacked in an elite player like Salmonson. And yeah, nice to see Brad Lambert still bringing that speed, that creativity, that flashiness, like you said, and hoping for Chaz Lucius to, get better here and get more confident heading into his AHL season.
Yeah, and Salmonson, one last note on him. I saw someone on Twitter bring up the fact that his comp, like their comp for him was a right-handed Dylan Sandberg. And I thought that was perfect because they're both, like 6'2", 185-pound defenseman. I think Sandberg's like 6'3". He might be a little bit bigger, but they play the same way. They're smooth skating, defensive defensemen, not a lot of flash to their game, but they're going to get the puck out. They're good enough puck movers. And their skating and gap control and all that stuff that you need in a modern defenseman really shines through. And I'm super excited to watch Salmonson a year from now when he's with the Moose or he's up with the Jets, because I think the right-handed Dylan Sandberg comparison is a really good one for the player that they want him to be. And me personally, I really like Dylan Sandberg. I think he's a top 4 defenseman starting this year. Is he going to get that opportunity? I'm not sure. He might still be on the third line with Nate Schmidt, or the third pairing, excuse me. But the potential is there for him. They signed a bridge deal. I'm a big fan of how he defends the rush. You need your defenseman to defend the rush in today's NHL. So much offense comes off the rush, and he's the prime guy on that back end, other than maybe Josh Morrissey, who's maybe a better skater. But he's 6'3", great skater. And I think Salmonson, having that be his kind of projection as we look forward here is a good one as a right-handed Dylan Sandberg.
Yeah, I think so too. I always get these notifications that come through my computer now. I've updated my laptop, so that's what you folks heard there. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Sandberg, and we think alike, Connor, because I think that he's a guy that could work his way into the top 4 of this Jets team, this year and even next year, because he's still young. He improved throughout the whole season last year. He's big. He can be physical. He also sacrifices the body too. I mean, he's not super flashy like you've talked about, and I agree with that, but he's that, I think, a reliable defenseman that the Jets can count on as he gets further into his NHL career, and would be sweet to have him and Salmonson as 2 guys headlining this Jets decor for the foreseeable future. So moving forward for the Jets, they still got a few preseason games to go, all against Canadian teams. The game against Calgary, it'll be about finished once this segment comes to an end here. But Connor Hrabchak, writer for the Hockey Writers, host of a Level Flight podcast, got his credentials to cover the Jets this season.
Oh yeah.
Congrats once again, Connor, and
Thank you.
member of the Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hope to have you on the show here again as the season, gets rolling along for the Jets. Thank you for doing this, Connor.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and anytime. This was a blast. And yeah, thank you for the shout outs there. You really nailed it all. I appreciate that.
Of course. I have to do my research on my guests. So
Of course.
you enjoy the hockey season coming up here as preseason continues to go, and going to be fired up for that first night of hockey in the NHL. Connor Hrabchak joining this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast here on GShow Productions.
And Connor Hrabchak joining this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast for episode 3. Great to have him on this show. Very knowledgeable guest, and honestly, had so much fun talking with Connor. Be sure to check him out on Twitter as well as on Instagram. Follow along with his coverage on the Jets all season long. We'll link his socials in the description of this episode once it ends. But yeah, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools. This podcast is Jet Fuel, of course, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Be sure to visit their stores in Brandon and Winnipeg today to potentially purchase some of their great products. We're going to have a promo code for them very soon, so you guys can get a deal on some potential products when you buy them. Just working out some specifics on that front at this point. But be sure to visit their website at midcanadafasteners.shop to check out all of their products. If you're planning to buy something and want to do some research before, that'd be the place to do it. And yeah, also brought to you by Terrico. The Jet Fuel podcast is serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years. Check out their website at terrico.ca today for more details. But the Jets are currently tied in this game. They had the lead against the Calgary Flames, and then Calgary tied it up on a power play. Just to get the goal scorers here, it was Ford for the Jets on the power play, assisted by Nino Niederreiter and Alex Iafallo, and then Zari for the Calgary Flames as they answered back later on in the period over the halfway mark, assisted by Osterl and Zadorov. Shots are currently 30-16 for the Calgary Flames, and I don't want to jinx it, but just a minute left in the third period at this point might very well be going to OT. So could we see another shootout like in the Jets' opening game of the preseason on Sunday night against the Edmonton Oilers? Should be interesting to see. But we're going to take a quick transition here, and I'll be back to update you guys on what's happened in Jets Nation and Jetsland this past weekend, as it was the 2023 Fan Fest on Saturday at the Hockey for All Center on Portage Avenue. You're watching the Jet Fuel podcast here for episode 3 on GShow Productions, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools as well as Terrico. I'll be back in a moment for more here on episode 3. Welcome back, everybody, to this edition of the Jet Fuel podcast, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools as well as Terrico. Before we get into the stuff about FanFest, just want to give you guys an update on Nikolai Ehlers, who, of course, me and Connor were talking about him. We both felt it was unlikely that he was going to play in this game, which ended up being the case. He is not suiting up for tonight, and he's expected to miss the next 2 preseason games per John Liu on Twitter, X, that is, at John Liu TSN, tweeting, NHL Jets Ehlers continues to practice with non-game day players and is not likely to play Friday in Ottawa. Bonus says there's no cause for concern about the injury, but Ehlers' frustration level is high because his neck spasms are taking longer to subside than expected. You definitely don't like to hear that, especially of a player of Ehlers' caliber, who, like I said, is going to be a huge part of this team's success this year up front if they want to reach that full potential, in my opinion. As a forward group, as a lineup, he's just that impactful of a player. Like him or hate him, whether you want him traded or not, I think that's stupid if you want him traded, to be honest with you. But there are some people in that camp. Dynamic player he is. I can't praise Nick Ehlers enough, and he is also my favorite player, so maybe a bit biased there, but yeah, trying to keep it objective as possible. But tough to hear that he's frustrated. The frustration levels are high. He's been a guy that's dealt with his fair share of injuries throughout the past few seasons, so hoping that number 27 can get back on the ice as soon as possible. Let's get into FanFest for the Winnipeg Jets. It was held this Saturday at 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. at the Hockey Center for All on Portage Avenue. It included 3 ice time sessions, speakers from Jets alumni, and an autograph session from the Jets, some of their players. Player and staff interviews from the Manitoba Moose as well was included, in cultural performances from Filipino and Punjabi communities. As you guys saw there, I didn't want to play that clip yet, but here we are. Where is it? There it is. The Winnipeg Jets also unveiled their new RCAF jerseys, the Royal Canadian Air Forces jerseys. The Jets throwing them back for this season and putting them into their lineup of jerseys. The team will wear these 3 times this season, with the first being against the Carolina Hurricanes on December 4th. And yeah, my honest thoughts on the jerseys, to be honest with you, I do like the color scheme of the jerseys. I think the red goes really nice with that baby blue that the Jets are using. The only thing I'm not a fan of, I think they could have done this a bit better, is I love the Jets logo. It's been their logo, their main one, since they've returned in 2011, but I feel like it should have been, maybe something different. Throw it back to the actual RCAF logo, something like that, or you could have even retroized the logo a bit. Maybe you could have even thrown the heritage one on it. I just feel like it's a bit out of place on the jersey, but other than that, I mean, some people have loved them, some people have hated them. I like them, of course, with the logo. Would have liked to see something a bit different than the modern logo from the Jets, but hey, those garbage type color mitts are looking pretty nice, the brown ones there, and I'm a big fan of the socks, so no complaints really from me, except for, I think they should have used a different logo to go for the look that they're going for, which is a retro type of jersey, that was used in the late 40s. From the Royal Canadian Air Forces, that side of things, so Jets paying homage to that. But yeah, in terms of what the score is in this Winnipeg Jets game right now, it is currently in overtime. They went to overtime, Villanola getting a stick on a shot there. That currently happened in overtime, really using his good stick to its full potential since I've started watching. I haven't watched much of this game outside of the third period, so I can't really comment on how players have been looking and whatnot, but liking what I've seen out of Villanola, he broke 2 sticks on the same shift, which I've been there in a hockey game, not making the amount of money he wasn't making any money at all playing AA midget hockey, but yeah, always tough when that happens. And one thing that I can speak to experience on is that. But yeah, Jets next game will be Friday against the Ottawa Senators. Not sure if the game will be televised. I do hope so, because it's always entertaining to watch any type of hockey, no matter if it's preseason or regular season. But Jets will be in Ottawa. Hellebuck is expected to play as of now, but that could change in 2 days' time. And yeah, they're going to roll out the other roster most likely to play in that game. I feel like they're going to rotate, and as they cut it down, they're going to combine it into one type of roster, right? It won't really be needed for the 2 teams, Team Solani and Team Newmanham. But yeah, going to be exciting for the Jets, looking to extend their preseason record to 3-0 tonight against the Calgary Flames. I believe Iafallo just shot the puck there, save made by the Calgary goaltender. Not sure who's starting off the top of my head, but yeah, we're going to throw it to another transition, and I'll be back here for a huge announcement for the GShow Productions brand. I think a moment that you've all been waiting for. And oh, what a huge save by Ulmanen. What a huge save. He just kept the Jets alive in this game in OT. That was big time. Salmonen. I don't know why I said Olmanen. But yeah, I'll be right back to unveil the where we're at in the all brand new rebrand for GShow Productions here on the Jet Fuel Podcast for Episode 3, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, as well as Terrico. And welcome back, everybody, to this edition of the Jet Fuel Podcast, brought to you by Terrico and Make Canada Fasteners and Tools. Be sure to check out Make Canada Fasteners stores, of course, or visit their website today, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. And yeah, the GShow Productions rebrand. As you guys know, this is a fairly new podcast. It's a podcast that is only 3 episodes in. It's a brand new podcast that we've unveiled here on GShow Productions. We also have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers podcast, True Blue, which is going into its 4th episode coming up this Friday, so in 2 days' time. Also running a Pilot Mound Hockey Academy podcast called the Buffaloes Podcast. It is a hockey academy located in Pilot Mound, Manitoba, that plays in the Canadian School Sports Hockey League, and I am proud to announce that I haven't done this officially yet, but Pilot Mound Hockey Academy is a team that we are partnering with this year to not only podcast on them, but to blog and to also commentate on their hockey games. Now, Flow TV, which is the new name of Hockey TV, will be broadcasting all their games this season, so you're not going to be able to see them directly on GShow Productions here on this brand, but you will be able to check all those games out on Flow Sports, and we will showcase highlights on that podcast all season long. Of course, 2 brands that I've partnered with in terms of sponsorships is Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, as well as Terrico. Hoping to gain more sponsorships as time goes along, and we actually did gain one. Gordy Tummelson, goalie coach of Pilot Mound Hockey Academy, his brand, Goaltenders, is also a new sponsor. So thank you for that, Gordy. Excited to work with you in that capacity. And yeah, I guess time for the big ones. We have partnered with 2 other hockey leagues. Well, I guess Pilot Mound is one team we're covering in the CSSHL, nobody else. But we've partnered with the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League. We'll be podcasting for them, doing a weekly podcast all season long. Pretty much will be live streaming games for them. 26 regular season games is what's on tap, and we'll also be blogging too weekly for the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League. We're hoping to cover our first game, broadcast our first game this Sunday between the St. Boniface Riels and the defending 2-time back-to-back champion in the St. James Junior Canucks. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I'm excited to cover that league and really happy that I got to partner with them. We're also partnering with the Manitoba Female Hockey League, the top AAA hockey league for U18 female hockey players here in the province of Manitoba. It's a league I've covered in the past, and I'm excited to announce that we're partnering with them to broadcast 26 of their regular season games throughout the course of the 2023-2024 season, as well as doing weekly podcasts for them and blogging weekly for them too. Now, you may be asking, well, GShow, where are the weekly blogs going to be able to be seen? Well, we have launched a new website. GShow.ca is where you can find it, and our motto is, it's a bit cut off, I couldn't do this properly, but it's your gateway to all things sports in Manitoba. And, at this point, only going to be covering hockey really extensively, doing some football as well with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This is just the start, and for our website, the motto there, we're hoping to grow into your one-stop shop, honestly, that one place you go to consume sports content here in Manitoba, mainly at the non-pro level, is kind of something that I want to start off with. And this website, special thanks to Dave McDonald and his crew at Air Whistle Media for designing this thing, getting it ready. A lot of effort and work put into this, and I can't thank Air Whistle enough. But yeah, I think that you guys are going to love this site. It's fast, it operates at high speed, and it's got an about section about who I am, what GShow Productions is. We also have all our content on there too, with the embedded links. We have our blogs on there, as well as we also are going to have our podcast on there as well. We got news stories too from around Manitoba in the sports scene, and yeah, it's just a fantastic site, and I couldn't be happier with it. 4 of our first issue of blogs have dropped now, 2 Pilot Mound stories, as well as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Winnipeg Jets. I got an article on the Jets off-season. These blog articles are a bit outdated because we didn't launch the site exactly when planned. We really took our time with it. Well, Air Whistle Media really took their time with it to get it right, and I think they got it bang on. But yeah, news stories and blogs on there, a bit outdated as they're from a few weeks ago now, but be sure to check out our website on Monday, as we'll have some new content there. Super excited for what the future holds here for GShow Productions. You can find all our content on our website at gshow.ca. I'll link that in the description of every episode from now on, as well as showcasing it on the screen, along with all our other great sponsors, our 2 sponsors at this point, 3 becoming with goaltenders. But yeah, excited for the future of GShow Productions, man. I really am. I think this is going to be a really fun journey, and I hope you Jets fans all season long will be tuning in here and enjoying the content we're bringing. I am going to take one more transition here, and we're going to end off this episode very shortly here on the Jet Fuel Podcast for episode 3, brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, as well as Terrico. Well, you've made it to the end of this episode of the Jet Fuel Podcast for episode 3. I didn't end up catching what happened in the shootout, so I'm just going to take a look before we end off here. It was the Calgary Flames winning in a shootout. Mangiapane scored the only goal. Cole Perfetti didn't shoot this time around. He scored the only goal in the shootout on Sunday night against the Edmonton Oilers. Niederreiter, Ford, and Mesnikov all went and missed. Zari was the other player for Calgary who shot. But yeah, Jets fall to 2-1 on the preseason. It's just preseason at the end of the day. No teams really, playing their full lineup. So it is what it is about. It's about working out the kinks at this point for, the players that are expected to return to this year's team and will, and guys like Perfetti, Niederreiter, and all the returnees that are expected to. And it's about those guys like the prospects, like the bubble players that want to prove themselves and potentially get a shot on an NHL roster. So yeah, that's about going to do it for this edition of the Jet Fuel Podcast for episode 3. I've been your host, Graham, the GShow Forsyth. Special thanks to Connor Hrabchak for being the one and only guest on this week's episode. Of course, a special thanks to Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, as well as Terrico, for sponsoring this edition of the show. Thank you to you for tuning in, you the viewer, and I hope you enjoy our new episode. GShow Productions official website, gshow.ca, is officially live. Go check it out. I think you guys will love it. And yeah, I'll be back next Wednesday night to break down, the preseason games that the Jets have played up until that point, the one in Ottawa and the ones after that. the one in Ottawa coming up on Friday night. I'm also going to be joined by another great guest, so stay tuned on our social media pages, which are also linked in the description of this episode, to check us out there. And yeah, I'm also going to be going solo in that one to give you guys some other great content, maybe some Jets trivia. Wait to find out. But until next Wednesday, folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend as well. Enjoy the great hockey that is coming your way for preseason terms, that is, in terms of preseason. And I'll say so long to you, waving goodbye, giving you the salute, and peacing out is myself, Graham, the GShow Forsyth. Take care, everybody. See you next week, next Wednesday, for episode 4. Nico Feniak is going to take us away.